You ready? Good morning, everyone. We're going to reconvene in open session. We'll begin with commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin?
I have nothing today.
Commissioner Kiefer?
Nothing for me either.
Commissioner Mimelsmith?
Just had one thing I'd like to give an update that happened down in Annapolis yesterday. I've got to find the bill real quick, but we supported this bill. It was House Bill 737. It was the one about increasing the longevity of the disparity grant, and they made an amendment yesterday that looks like it's going to pass, that they changed the word extend to repealing the cutoff, so that is now does not have a date that it ends. It's now permanent, and then it increases the amount of reimbursement to 80%. So that's a good thing. So I was excited about that last night. So very rarely do we get good news from Annapolis.
Anything else, sir?
That was it.
Commissioner Wagner?
Oh, good morning. I have a couple things. Wanted to thank the staff and the community for the press release on coronavirus. I thought that went well. It was short and sweet, and I think everybody got the point. PR did a good job of getting it out there so everybody could see the link and follow it. And because I was asked several times, what's the county doing about it? What's the county doing about it? You know, what am I going to say? Wash your hands. So,
10 times.
and then I stopped at the home show. Again, thank the county and DES and EMS and everybody that was there. I made my rounds out there, and it's pretty fun. Sunday mornings, nobody's there except, Dr. Michael's here. Yeah, I saw him about like 4 times this weekend. I mean, we just kept bumping into each other. I was up at the outdoor school. They had Maple Fest. Did you go up, Court? Because you usually go up.
Last year.
Oh, yeah. And it was nice. I bought something called maple cream. Anybody hear that? Raise your hand if you heard of maple cream. Yeah. I never heard of it, but tried to sell Dr. Michael for $20. I paid $14, but he wouldn't take it. He wouldn't go on that. But it's good. But that was a nice event. Breakfast, well organized. So you might want to try and make it up there next year. They have it every year, as far as I know. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I, too, attended Maple Fest. That was a nice event to be up there at the outdoor school. And again, my thanks to all who organized and participated in the press conference this week, informing our citizens and letting know behind the scenes that we are being proactive. With that being said, I'd like to go then to reports from county staff. Any staff, please come forward.
Good morning, Commissioners.
morning.
David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services. I'm here requesting an official vote on the reclassifications of 2 positions within the Division of Emergency Services. The first one would be to reclassify Operations Manager Brian Albert from the position of Operations Manager to the position of Assistant Director of Emergency Communications. The second one would be to reclassify the current Assistant Director of Communications and Emergency Management, Tom Brown, to the position of Emergency Manager, and separate Emergency Management from Communications. That would be a net increase for the Assistant Director of Communications of $9,194 and a decrease in the Emergency Manager's salary of $4,535. The total net cost is an increase of our budget of $4,659. It requires no additional hiring and is submitted as stated.
We need grade and step for those.
It would be for the Assistant Director of Communications, would move from a grade 14 step 1 to a grade 16 step 1 and a salary of $64,397. And the Assistant Director current would be downgraded to a grade 15 step 15 for an annual salary of $84,219.
You're looking for a vote for this today?
Yes.
My motion is to support the recommendations.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
I vote. Thank you very much.
Moving on to Smithsburg update. So, hello again. David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services. Obviously, I think most people are aware of the newspaper articles and the activities of the Sheriff's Department relative to the Smithsburg Emergency Medical Services. I'll let the staff here introduce themselves, and then I'm going to turn this over to the President of Smithsburg EMS to start it out, and then Director Chisholm, who has been our lead relative to our activities in the last 12 months, helping Smithsburg EMS reformat their operations and build to some type of sustainable and functional organization. So first, if we could just introduce everybody, and then we'll turn it over to President Gerber.
I'm President Gerber of Smithsburg EMS.
Dave Chisholm, Emergency Medical Services Operations.
Dale Fishak, President of Worcester County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association.
You start out.
We've been going along with what was recommended by the Board of the County Commissioners. We have sold all the equipment that was recommended following the loan from all of you. That went well. Every piece of equipment that was recommended to be sold, we have sold, following the guidelines of the set pricing with the guidelines from DES. That has been done. We found a new accounting firm, as I reported to you before, with SEK in Hagerstown. We have set up new accounting practices with them. We've totally restructured the organization with practices set in place so that there'll be no, not as much, the word I'm looking for, that we can't get in this position again. So that has gone well. We have updated the county in terms of DES so that they know all the time what is going on with us. We got in contact with the Washington County Sheriff's Department when we felt it was appropriate to let them know of the situation with the former treasurer. We cooperated fully with them. We've cooperated fully with the county audit so that they had all the information they needed as well. Things have been going as well as could be expected with where things have been for us. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I guess question for all of you is what's the financials other than what we just read? And what's the financial situation with EMS in Smithsburg now? I mean, are they back on track? Are they meeting? Are they going to have enough money at this point to continue? Or
We have separated the accounts into a main operating account, a fundraiser account for the volunteer part, and then we have also set up an account to allocate funds to start paying the loan back.
Okay.
And the amount is substantial in the main operating account. I certainly could give you rough estimates of that,
But you're self-sufficient, I guess is the word I'm looking for at this point.
Yes,
yes.
despite the situation, delivery of services are still there, protecting the people.
Yes.
Do you affirm that? Yes?
Yes.
And if I might add to that to better address Commissioner Wagner's question, their expenses are on target as projected. Salaries are within the ranges that we had anticipated. They have not enacted any salary increases, and that's both with the board and our concurrence that we wouldn't move salaries until we got through this 401k review and made sure that there are adequate financial resources to correct any deficiencies. And it looks like there will be deficiencies there as well. And as far as income, all income is on target per our presentation, with the exception of their annual fund drive. The last number I saw, I think it closed out for February. That was about $30,000 under the anticipated revenue. But overall, when you backed out the non-reoccurring cash incomes, their income versus expenses are on target with what we're projected. So that's good news.
Thank you.
We're also posting every month so that the membership can see exactly where our expenditures are going. And there's complete transparency at the board meetings. And Director Chisholm has been there, and there's been a representation from the Volunteer Association at our board meetings.
I think to come forward just a little bit, and certainly the current events that are out there, it's important to recognize that last year, at the point the division became involved with help from the association, their board was already actively engaged in looking to see where things went wrong. One of the things they had initiated, and it's a good situation, was they had created a separation from the former treasurer. So the things that we have here, they were putting business practices in place last year to make sure that they were in a better position there. What we know is this, obviously, as you can read in the paper, has been going on for better than 10 years. It's not the reason that put them in the financial situation directly. It certainly contributed to that. The financial situation they were in last year was as much, if not more, attributed to just poor decision-making relative to expenses versus incomes. That had to be righted, and regardless of theft or no theft, their financial situation would have produced itself probably a little quicker because some money was taken. And it's unfortunate we see that, but what I want to make sure that the commissioners get in front of them is, without question and without dispute, the audits and the change in review and accounting procedures that were enacted last year, had they been in place, likely would have prohibited this type of conduct. We before were providing county taxpayer funds in a quarterly disbursement check, and then requiring just invoices for fuel and maintenance. But at this point, the entire $48,000, the entire EMS subsidy, the entire fuel and maintenance budget, all of that is a reimbursement and have to be provided through invoicing and receipts to the third-party contractor, SEK, before those tax dollars are distributed. The audits, again, without question, were the right move, as we talked about last year, and I would advocate we continue that practice and consider the fire departments once we get through the EMS groups. And then I don't know if it's something that economically can be conducted annually, but if not annually, there should be some type of systemic audit that's ordered, whatever the duration going forward, whether that's every other year, every 3 years, every 5 years. I think without question, and I think the president would agree, we are in a much better position to see and target these things. And I think you've sent a message. The expectation is this will not be tolerated moving forward. Not that it was ever intentionally tolerated before, we just didn't move forward with steps that put us in a position to have as much oversight and transparency as we have today. And it's definitely a different scenario.
I think that's one of the reasons this board wanted audits, just to get everything back in check and before we kept spending money. I do have one other question, and I'll drop it. And I don't know, it's sort of sensitive, but I guess, sometimes I'm not desensitized. Is there do you foresee any other impending charges against any of our personnel at Smithburg? I guess my concern for asking that question, is there anybody still in place in charge, or that could maybe,
No, absolutely not.
so this is it?
This is it.
Okay, that's
And
all.
I'd like to just definitely point out, their entire leadership team has been replaced, whether that was voluntary or involuntarily, but they're under a complete new leadership team, so.
I just want to come in. I understand how difficult it is to come in and talk about it, but I agree. I think the audit is a benefit to not only the taxpayers, but also to the companies themselves, so that it's helping everybody out. And
I'd just like to say that it's a tremendous burden to put on volunteers to pick out health insurance, to deal with the insurance for the employees, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, the
401k retirement.
the 401k insurance, the workers' compensation insurance, and I'm not saying that excuses the behavior that we're now dealing with today, but it's a lot that most companies do not have one individual just doing alone. So I think that's something to consider as well. And I don't know how it goes at other companies. I can only speak for my own, but we had other things to review besides just what happened that's current.
hopefully soon we'll be moving in that direction with all the
Understood.
EMS.
Tony, I'd like to thank you for, you stepped forward in a difficult time. You're new in your role, relatively new as
Yes,
president
I
of the
am.
company. And, it's a tough start to that role, for
Thank you.
sure.
Appreciate that.
Can you share with us, or anyone, can you share with us what some of those internal procedures are that might be changing? A couple examples?
Well, we've set up that there's the accounting firm we're dealing with now does internally do account reviews each month, so that there's someone outside of our organization that's doing checks of the bank accounts, so that's not just internally. We have more than one person signing checks that are of a higher amount. We've set up more QuickBooks systems that, along with SEK, they're double checking those systems. We've been more transparent with the company itself, so they're more aware, like posting the information about where our expenditures are each month. We've just done more internal reviews and going for more professional advice from an accounting firm who has more expertise than some of us do as to what their advice would be to keep a good check and balance of business practices.
Good, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? If not, thank you all very much for your diligence.
All right. I just
Comments?
want to add one last thing. And this really is, I think, what Commissioner Kiefer was saying is, thanks to Joni and her leadership team, it takes a strong leadership to bring a group through something that is as difficult as the past 12 or 18 months has been. And I know you've put a lot of time in it, and I think that needs to be duly recognized here, that she doesn't get any benefit out of this other than to help serve her community and make sure that Smithsburg EMS is in a good place to continue that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we all thank you for
Appreciate it.
that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll continue with county staff reports. Any other staff need to come forward? Any other staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to citizens. Kirk? Sarah, I'm sorry, I missed. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move forward to citizens' participation. Please come forward. Dr. Michael, state your name, address, and matter. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Boyd Michaels, Superintendent of Washington County Public Schools, located at 10435 Downsville Pike. I know I'm becoming a familiar face here with the citizen participation opportunity. I do appreciate your time, the 3 minutes that you give us, as well as our joint meeting sessions with the Board of Education.
Well, we'll always give you maybe 4. We won't.
Well, I'll try to keep it to 3 here. I'll shorten my comments in the,
Well, thank
in the
you for that
future.
consideration, though.
But we do appreciate your time. I think it's important that the Board of County Commissioners, as well as the Board of Education, is well educated on what's happening in our public schools. So again, we do appreciate your time. Bullying, childhood trauma, anxiety, youth suicide. These are but a few of the many challenges that our students are facing in their daily lives, not only in school, but outside of school. With community issues on the rise, students are coming to school dealing with poverty, homelessness, trauma, social skill deficits, and numerous other issues. School counselors play a critical role in addressing these challenges by being part of the solution. They are the liaison with the school, the family, community resources, and they can definitely help with a wide variety of social emotional needs of our children. Additionally, counselors are vital in working with our students to grow their learning potential and establishing a pathway to academic achievement and preparation for the rest of their life. In the midst of a mounting national mental health crisis, Washington County Public Schools simply is not staffed to support our students with enough counselors and social workers. These staff members are the safety net for children when mental health services are not available, as often is the case in Washington County, and particularly in Washington County, sometimes mental health services don't even exist. The American Counselor Association recommends a staffing ratio of 1 counselor to every 250 students. 1 counselor to every 250 students. To put that in perspective, for Washington County Public Schools, we have 1 counselor on average for every 325 high school students. 325 high school students. 1 counselor for every 333 middle school students. And probably the most serious one that's out of whack is 1 counselor for every 453 elementary students. 453, and the ratio is to be 1 to 225. We must meet the needs of our students and try to reach these recommended standards. To do that in Washington County, to provide a full-time counselor in every school, minimally a full-time counselor in every school, and to reach those recommendations, we need the addition of 30 more counselors than what we have today. 30 more counselors than what we have today. Last year, we were fortunate to be able to use state funding. We were able to hire 6 new counseling positions and 4 social worker positions. I've heard throughout the county how valuable these positions have been to our staff members, to our teachers, to ESP, to the administration, and most importantly, to our students. But we're not able to make that level of progress this year. Keeping with the board's desire to present a conservative, fiscally conservative budget to the county commissioners, and looking at other priorities that we have, we've only been able to add 2 counseling positions to the budget that's before you at this point. Again, this does not begin to meet the needs of the escalating needs of our students. I hope the county commissioners will fully fund this reasonable request from the Board of Education this year. I'll be back next week. I want to share some concerns I have with large class sizes that we have throughout the county. And again, we appreciate the support of the county commissioners and hope you're able to support our budget this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael.
Mike, I have one quick question.
Sure.
You gave the 1 counselor to 250 students, but then you broke down for high school, middle, and elementary. Could you give what the recommended average is for the high school, middle, and elementary schools?
So what I understand from Helen Huffer, our counseling, and I've heard this number over and over, 250 is that recommended average. I think that's across elementary, middle, and high school. I've seen different averages for high school, middle, and elementary, but I think they've changed over time with the increasing needs of elementary schools. So I think that's why traditionally, I mean, there was a time we didn't have any counselors in elementary, and then we slowly started adding those to larger schools. All of our elementaries have services in elementary, but most of them are shared. 2 and 3 schools share 1 counselor sometimes. But the 250 recommendation is across the board, is what I understand. Thank
Terry,
you.
Yeah, you'd mentioned a lot of numbers there. You said 30 more counselors are needed in Washington County. Then you said you were able to hire 6.
Right, so the 30 would be going forward. So last year, we were able to hire 6 counselors and 4 social workers. That was part of the state grant, but that's included in these numbers when we're looking at our averages right now. So going forward, in order to get to that recommended number, we would have to add 30. Right now, in our proposed budget to you, we're requesting 2. Ideally, I'd like to be able to request 30, but I don't think you could support that. So again, our board's been very reasonable with what they've tried to slowly try to address a wide variety of concerns we have across Washington County, and trying to provide additional counseling and social worker resources is one of those things we're working on. So we have a long ways to go. Even if we fund the budget fully, we still would need 28 to get to that
Okay, so
national
back to the 2
recommendation.
that you're requesting. What's the total amount?
The total amount just for those 2, it would be 2 FTEs. They're teacher level positions. So including benefits now at this point, new counselor starting would be somewhere between $75,000 and $80,000 a piece, counting all benefits, FICA, health insurance, all those types of things.
Salary?
That'd be salary, benefits, everything we need to get them started each.
$75,000 a counselor?
Remember
That
that
seems low.
$55,173 is our starting salary. By the time you throw $20,000, $25,000 worth of benefits there, health, retirement, all those other pieces, it's about another
Okay.
50% of a salary.
Okay, and then one other question, maintenance of effort, cost per pupil. What does the county contribute, what's our contribution on the maintenance of effort?
I don't want to misquote that number. At one time, the county was about 60% of our per pupil allotment, and the state was 40. I think those numbers have reversed, and if Kerwin
Still
goes through,
confused.
what I think is going to happen is going to
I
be.
was just looking for a dollar amount, but I'll get that from
Yeah,
staff.
we're 20th in the state based on last year's funding. We ranked 20th in per student allotment,
Okay.
both county and state average together.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Michael.
Thank you.
Are there any other citizens who'd like to participate? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the next agenda item, formal approval of zoning map amendment, RZ 19-006. Andrew Bright, I believe that is you.
Yeah.
Please begin.
Thank you. This is a follow-up item to a public hearing that you conducted on February 11th, 2020. There's an application for rezoning of Heritage Hewitt parcel that was near Hewitt's Crossroads on Greencastle Pike. you reached a unanimous consensus to grant the rezoning and instructed county attorney's office to prepare the appropriate decision and ordinance, and those are attached to the agenda form. It grants the rezoning based upon alternatively either mistake of fact or change of facts, both of which would be supported under zoning law.
Commissioners, comments, questions?
What are you looking for, a vote? Is that what we're
Right, there's a recommended
Formal
motion.
vote to authorize signature of the ordinance.
To enact the ordinance and adopt the decision.
I motion to authorize the ordinance and adopt the decision.
Second.
There's a second. Okay. I have first and a second. Any other discussion?
On that motion was.
I was trying to remember.
Any other discussion? If not, I call for a vote to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the National Road Museum, a request for hotel rental funds. Mr. Kiesecker and Tiffany, please come forward. For the record, name and address, please.
Richard Kiesecker, Vice President of the National Road Heritage Foundation and the National Road Museum, Hagerstown, Maryland.
Tiffany Ahalt, marketing volunteer for National Road Heritage Foundation, 214 North Main Street, Boonesboro.
First of all, we would like to thank the commissioners for their time this morning to hear our funding requests. We certainly appreciate that. The National Road would like to request $75,000 from the Hotel Rental Tax Fund to support our efforts for funds towards the fabrication of the National Road exhibits. The story of the National Road will show the significance of how the National Road has affected Boonesboro, Washington County, and its connections to the Civil War, state of Maryland, and the nation. There will be a positive impact on Washington County visitor attendance and hotel rentals. The 18 Battlefield had 326,197 visitors in 2018. Harpers Ferry National Historic Park had 265,737 visitors in 2018. To start, we are projecting 35,000 visitors a year, including 24 tour bus groups. We anticipate that 3% will stay in hotels in Washington County for an additional 1,050 rooms nights per year. This will be the only museum in Maryland dedicated to the historic highway.
Good morning. Thanks again for the opportunity to present our request to you this morning. The Historic National Road was America's first federally funded highway. Construction started in 1811 in Cumberland and would end in Vandalia, Illinois in 1837. It really created America's Main Street, which we all know and love today in our many communities. It also was the first of Maryland's 18 scenic byways, which the state of Maryland heavily markets and encourages our visitors, who 80% of those folks coming to Maryland are traveling by car. So scenic byways are extremely important to the state of Maryland, and certainly we have 2 of those here in Washington County. National Road Museum in Boonesboro is just a little over 2,000 square feet. It is a small but mighty museum because the visitor experience will be very high quality, professional. And I'm sure we're not the first museum that's been here asking for funds. And everybody wants a museum, right? Everybody who has a passion, a collection wants a museum. But how many of those folks really take the time to plan a visitor experience? And most important, have a sustainable plan to keep that museum opening and to really invest the funds, private and public. Our museum, although we've been spending a lot of time on the building and bus parking, we've really created a lot of very meaningful and important partnerships, not only locally, regionally. And I can tell you that with the 5 other states on the National Road, we are certainly the envy of those states in the byway community because they too would like to have a museum of such quality to tell that story. You all might know the Lincoln Highway, Route 66, and certainly National Road is not as sexy. It will certainly encourage travelers to get their kicks, but also spend money as they travel to and from the museum. So what are the types of visitors that will come to the museum? Will certainly be tour groups, but also think about all the people who travel in motorcycle groups or those who have antique cars. And again, with the state's encouragement to travel the byways, we'll have a lot of folks who will visit the museum, but also they'll continue their journey to and from because they're going to come through Washington County. They're going to go on to other destinations. I also want to say with all the great activity taking place here in Washington County with C&O Canal, eventually we'll have an aviation museum. This museum will certainly position Washington County to be one of the premier locations to tell the story of this country's transportation history and heritage. It's just going to be unprecedented. So the fact that the museum will be located on the byway in Boonesboro will certainly bring a lot of economic impact to Boonesboro, Washington County, as well as the state of Maryland. I also like to just mention that we also set the bar and we'll be able to help some of our partners like the Washington County Rural Heritage Museum, who has an amazing collection, which we certainly can't put a Conestoga wagon or an antique car in our museum. But when folks come to the museum and visit, they learn the story of the National Road, our transportation history, and then they go on to other sites like that to view the actual collection. We have quite a few facts and programming information we've presented to you today, but we're certainly happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
So how do you manage the facility? Are there paid people there and?
So it's a good question. So it will be a combination. We certainly will rely on volunteers to be docents. We will have a few paid staff. We're in the process of creating a management plan, which will really help us to identify our specific needs with regards to staffing. One thing that's very important for the success of this museum is to be open as much as possible. A lot of grant and funding opportunities are really tied to how many hours you're open and serving the public. So we want to make sure that we have adequate staffing and also being able to be out there creating partnerships, writing grants, but creating that great visitor experience. So it will certainly be a combination of volunteers and paid staff.
And visitors, is there a cost to the visitors to tour?
Yes, sir. There will be a cost. It seems in the tourism industry there really is a value to having a cost, and that will help us to ensure a quality visitor experience. We will certainly have levels of fees, certainly discounts for military folks, group tours, children, and certainly our school groups. We're going to work very hard to obtain funding that we can create some free opportunities for some of our, particularly our local school groups.
So you're in phase 6 is what I'm seeing, is that correct?
We are currently in our fundraising, yes, for phase 6, which will allow us then to fabricate and install the exhibits.
So the building is almost ready.
Yes, sir. We'll have some modifications to lighting and then finishing our motor coach parking, some of those other smaller amenities, but for the most part, we're ready to, once those.
And the 75,000 is dedicated to a certain place.
Specifically for the fabrication and installation of those exhibits.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Because what do you mean by the dedication to the fabrication installation of the NRM exhibits?
So the exhibits, I don't know if anybody had a chance to view our fly-through video, which shows you all the exhibits, what they look like, they're already planned. So that actually then allows the company that will make the actual exhibits, the physical exhibits themselves, print the all the visual pieces and so forth, create the videos and everything. So that is what the funding covers, and then for them to actually come to the location and do the installation and set everything up.
And how much fundraising do you do currently outside of grants?
A tremendous amount. We, for the most part, our funding has mainly come from the state of Maryland through the Maryland Heritage Areas program, which we definitely want to emphasize the state's investment in this program through those funds. But every day is an effort for us to go after individual donors. We continue to write a lot of grants to various foundations. And then in this final push, we're really reaching out to folks like the Marriott Foundation, CEO of WeatherTech, looking at that niche opportunity of people who would have an interest in historic roads, people who are transportation enthusiasts, antique cars. So we feel comfortable, but again, we've got a steady plan, and we continue to tap into all sources.
And is there any matching, if you receive this grant, is there any state match or anything like that?
With the Heritage Area grants, there is always a matching component to that, so that's been part of our strategy as we apply for funds, is having that strategy with having the cash in hand. So you can't match state money with state money, you can match federal, state money. So when we're looking at our funding opportunities, we've always got our reserves to make sure we can strategize on meeting those match requirements.
So could you receive a match from this amount of money? Do you have anything set right now that you're looking to get matched?
Well, we have money in our funds to support that, yes, in our account to support that, yes, and that go towards the various phases. And Dick, I don't know if you want to.
I'm talking about like additional money. Would you receive any additional money from other grants if we're sometimes, if we give so much money to a nonprofit, then you have somebody else that's saying, hey, I'll match that dollar for dollar.
And that is part of our strategy and our fundraising, yes. Yes.
And that's always been our goal, to have money to match to a particular grant. Most of the grants, I would say, a lot of the grants today, they require a match. So this is like money that we could match and double, what you would contribute. We've done that in the past with the MHAA grants. As Tiffany said, they are matching grants, and there's a lot of that. It's always good to have your money available for that match, because that cash match gives you more points on grants that you apply for. So yes, this money, even though it's restricted, even though it's for the fabrication, the grants that we would be applying for is for the fabrication. And we use money in our restricted accounts as a match for some grants that we apply for.
So if you have 5 phases and have dollar signs beside all of them, that's all been paid already, or is there a debt load?
No, that's all been paid. All been paid
So
off.
you guys already made a lot of money, raised a lot of money.
Yes, we have.
We have, yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, I like National Road. I'm old enough to remember it, so I traveled that thing. Yeah, so that's the only question I had, I think.
I think this project has been many years in the making. And Tiffany, I really appreciate one thing you said about our aviation museum that's been announced recently, and the C&O Canal project we know is all underway for the headquarters here in Williamsport, and the National Road. That's Washington County certainly tells a story about transportation, and I think that can draw in and attract a lot of visitors into our community. I think it's very fitting that the hotel rental tax is the money that we're using to potentially fund this. I'm in support. I've always appreciated transportation. My college thesis was the economic impact of the interstate highways. So I see where you're coming
Is there
from.
a motion to support this?
I would like to make a motion, but if I could ask a question real quick first. I see of the total project cost for this phase, $630,000. Our portion is $75,000. $345,000 is lumped together, the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, Nora Roberts, Town of Boonesboro, Allegheny Power. Do you have a breakdown of what each of those separate contributions are?
Yes, we do. That I could, send you for that, yes.
Before the motion, one question. Sarah, hotel, motel funding balance?
Yes, hotel motel funding balance is $1,068,000, and that includes the reduction that was just authorized for the BMX trail.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions or a motion to approve the $75,000 request? Wayne,
I think Wayne motioned, didn't you?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to approve the $75,000 from hotel rental tax to the National Road Museum project.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One more reason to
Commissioners.
come to Washington County.
It's exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up rejection of bid PUR 1454. Brandy Noggle, Dave Mason, please come forward. State your name and matter. Again.
Good morning. Brandy Nagelmeyer in the Purchasing Department.
Dave Mason, Deputy Director in charge of solid waste.
The recommendation I have for you this morning is the rejection of bid PUR 1454, mattress and base bed removal, disposal, and recycling. We move to take action in the best interest of the county and to request the rejection of the bid that we received for this service. The estimated cost per mattress was originally estimated around $5 per mattress. The proposal we got in, the cost is more like $15 per mattress. We advertised this in the local newspaper, on the state website, and on the county website. 13 companies downloaded the document. We received one bid. Mr. Mason and I recommend that the board reject this bid proposal and seek permission to rebid this project with a revised scope at a later date.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it, and then what are we going to do with the mattresses in the meantime?
Well, currently we just bury them, which is what we're trying to get away from. So we'll just continue status quo until we have a better option.
Okay, there's first and second. Any other discussion?
How many mattresses do we get on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, or maybe something?
I mean, we probably lowball an estimate at $3,500 a year. I mean, that's probably closer to maybe over 4,000, but just for the budgeting purposes, we use 3,500.
That spurred a question for me. I know I already made the motion, but I want to ask a question anyway. What do we charge if I bring a mattress up there? How much does it cost me?
Well, right now it's just it falls under a $10 minimum, so it's a $10.
So it's just the weight still.
Right.
Okay.
Now, you said we lowball it for 35 for budgeting, but do you think you actually take 4,000?
Well, I mean, we've never really counted them because it's just too hard to count because it's not an individual item. Okay. So we just kind of estimate based on kind of what we see and get a feel for. So.
Is that something that we should be looking at? If it's costing us, or could cost us $15 to recycle a mattress, that's something we should be passing on to the citizen?
Well, the plan originally was to get this approved, and then I was going to come to you for a new fee for mattresses. But since this came in so high, we want to take a step back. So maybe in the future we could discuss a fee per mattress box spring.
There's a first and a second to reject the bid. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, termination, first right of refusal. Todd Moser. Please introduce yourselves and the matter, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator. Joining me today is Jeb Eckstein with
Community Volunteer Fire Company Incorporated of District 12.
Thank you. Move to approve the termination of the first right of refusal. The Community Volunteer Company, INC of District Number 12, is requesting the termination of the first right of refusal clause and a potential sale of property. The fire company owns a former schoolhouse building located at 18005 Tillmanton Road in Fairplay, and the county has the first right of refusal if the fire company decides to sell the property. The fire company has been approached by a local resident that is interested in purchasing the former schoolhouse. The potential buyer's sole purpose is to restore the shell of the building to maintain the history and integrity of the building. Parking would continue to be permitted for any fire company events under the new ownership. The fire company has spent over $25,000 to have asbestos removed in order to have the building ready for future renovations or raising. The sale of the property could recoup the money spent, save the cost of demolition, and preserve the historic building. To date, no decision has been made by the fire company to sell the building. However, the fire company would like to avoid future delays if they decide to sell the property.
Yeah, we're here basically, before we can even receive a permanent offer on this, we will have to clear this hurdle. If this hurdle didn't clear, there's no sense in the prospective buyer even doing anything more.
Is there any reason the county would ever want that, Todd? I mean,
No, and I think that's why we decided, normally we would take this to you when a formal offer was sent in, but I don't
Right.
think there would be any reason. That's why we just kind of want to clear this hurdle beforehand.
I'd motion to approve.
Second it.
First and second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Sarah.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer,
Kim Edlin, Director of Budget and Finance.
and here to present several budgets for you today, starting with the general fund budget, including revenues, high level of expenditures as far as what has been requested from internal departments as well as outside agencies. And then also several individual departmental budgets that we will review. There is a revised long-term plan. It is on the table over there. It is different from the 5-year plan that was included in your ARF. I do want to make mention of that. I did update your books with that 5-year plan. It's the first page in tab 4 of your budget book, so you already have that revised copy. So to begin the discussion, I would like to review general fund revenues. So if you have your budget book in front of you, please move to tab 4. The first page, as I stated, is the 5-year plan. So the page after that's 4-1, and that'll start general fund revenues. I plan to review large increases or changes to general fund revenues. If you have questions on any other accounts, please let me know. Real estate assessments, real estate tax did increase by $3.6 million or 3% over the FY20 budget. These assessments come from the State Department of Assessment and Taxation. Fiscal year 20 actuals are trending over budget currently by about $1 million. However, we do expect some additional adjustments related to various credits to come through, so we anticipate that that number will lower as we progress through the remainder of fiscal year 20 for some of those credits. However, real estate assessments are strong, and we continue to see better growth. In the past 10 years, beginning with part of the recession, we saw 5 years of declines, followed by some slow growth. We're now seeing growth of between 2% and 3%, which represent healthier levels. And just to kind of put this into context, I was looking at some of the history for real estate revenue. And in 2010, real estate revenue finished $115 million that year. So in 2019, we ended the year with $113.8 million. So interesting to see that we are still lower than 2010 levels. But we do see that growth. It's good, it's positive, and it looks strong, so we anticipate that moving forward. The income tax is the next large increase that you see. It has increased as anticipated. Keep in mind, as you look at this figure of $103 million, $5.7 million of the increase, $7.8 million of that $103 million is related to disparity grant income that we'll receive from the state. So the income...
How much was that from the state on the disparity grant?
Disparity grant total from the state is $7.8 million. which is a $5.7 million increase over what we had been getting previously. So in fiscal year 2020, we had budgeted around $2 million for that disparity grant. Now that our income tax rate is 3.2%, we're eligible for additional funding from the state.
Sarah, when we had talked about that last year, it was mentioned, and maybe Commissioner Monoschmidt might have information on it too, that there was going to be a point in time where the state would have to reauthorize the disparity grant, or it was coming up for renewal or a new piece of legislation to keep it going.
Well, that's what I tried to explain in the comments, is the original that we voted to support that was to extend it either 2 or 3 years, and now they got rid of that, whatever you want to call sunset, and make it a permanent, and then actually increase the percentages.
Thank you.
Which again, rare that we get good news from Annapolis.
Very good news, very good news. So the increase is related to the income tax rate changing from 2.8% to 3.2%, plus a small percentage for wage growth. Are there any questions on the real estate projection or the income tax projection? If not, I would like to mention, if you look down to the interest for investments, we did increase that from $1 million to $1.5 million. We received close to $2 million in FY19. Obviously, with what we are experiencing today with the stock market, investment income does fluctuate. So,
what's that percentage that we're calculating? To that 1 million, 1.5 million.
Well, probably 2%.
It's based on past performance, so we've seen about 2% to, we're down to 0.5 now.
When we realized the $2 million for last year, was it about 2 to 3% that we were receiving? So I'm thinking 1.5 million would be close to 2%.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like you to flip to page 4-4. There are other revenue adjustments that were made, but they are minor in nature and probably don't need a conversation. Page 4-4, you'll see speed camera revenue is $861,000 less than what was budgeted in fiscal year 20. The current trend is an average of about $150,000 per month in revenues. However, that's reduced by about $60,000 per month in expenditures. The revenues and expenditures do fluctuate somewhat, revenues more so, but that's just an average that I've provided for you. We have budgeted slightly less than that trend for fiscal year 2021 at a total of $1.6 million in revenues. And just for information, we've budgeted approximately $800,000 for expenditures, netting $800,000 in net speed camera revenue. That $800,000 will be transferred to the capital fund to provide for the police, fire, and emergency services training facility. If revenues come in less than what we anticipate, we may have to accommodate by reducing the amount that is sent to the capital plan, but we'll have to review that if it occurs. Yep. So those are the major changes for revenues. Again, real estate tax, income tax, investment income, varies, but we think we have a pretty good estimate. Revenue growth does appear high. If you look at the last page on 4-6, total revenue increase between all categories, $18.5 million over fiscal year 20. What I'd like to talk to you about now is the fact that while our revenue increase is $18.5 million, that is not what we have available to spend. And I think that's really important here. We know based on our 5-year plan that we have costs related to Kerwin, we have costs related to EMS and fire, build out of those 38 firefighters that we anticipate hiring with the SAFER grant. So as our costs increase for those hires, we're going to need to be able to provide for it. So we don't want to spend $252,000 on recurring expenditures. We cannot afford to do that. I would like you to flip to the first page in tab 4, which is the 5-year plan, so that we can see this in front of you and discuss it a little bit further. So if you take a look at this, the way it's organized is the years are across the top. You see 2021 to 2025. General revenue and program revenue is at the top of the page. And then you have different expenditures separated by categories. So you can see how much money is spent for wages, how much money is spent for benefits, and then the operating component. You'll see on the lower end of the page, under the black line, these are anticipated future costs, or some of them are broken out just for your information so that you know what's included in some of the budget numbers up top. So if we just want to take a look at fiscal year 2021, we can see that the total revenues equal $252.3 million. That matches this budgeted revenue information. You can see the high-level categories: real estate property, $132 million, income tax, $95 million. The disparities broken out, $7.8 million. So you can see those different categories. If you follow down, you can see total wages, $39.5 million. Benefits, $23.7 million, and then our operating costs below that. Keep in mind the expenditures that you see on this 5-year plan. These are what have been requested. So these are requests from internal departments. These are requests from outside agencies. And as we look to the bottom figure, $251.8 million in requests, okay? Where I'd like you to turn your attention to now is if you look to the right of the page under the 2025 column at the very bottom, you are going to see a deficit of $7.8 million, okay? So what that is saying is that if we move forward all requested budgets as they stand today and don't make adjustments, we will not be able to afford those expenditures 5 years from now. So we have to make some adjustments to the requested budgets. In the past, staff has moved forward with that process and evaluation. And so I'd like to ask you today if you would like staff to go through the budgets that have been requested and make recommendations to reduce the increase in requests and bring to the board something that is balanced.
I have a question.
I do.
Okay.
Okay, I know what you just said. 8.5 million this year excess, right? Not that we can spend, I understand that, right? Is that what you said?
What I said was that 5 years down the road, as we look at Kerwin, EMS, fire costs, costs for the police, fire, and emergency services training facility, all of those additional costs that we know are coming, we're going to be about $8 million short.
Understand, but didn't you say this year's budget, there was a surplus of, that's a bad word to use, but there's 8 million. Would you agree? Yeah.
If we can reduce some of the expenditures, what we will want to do is spend that funding on one-time purchases.
Understand, but it looks to me, I guess the question I have is pretty basic, actually. You're plus that much this year, and then I see we're deficit next fiscal budget of 1.5 million. Is that correct? Am I looking at that right?
No, not necessarily. So what this is showing is all of the requests that have come in. So if we fund all the requests, we don't have any extra money to do any one-time capital.
But if we fund them all next year, we're
right.
We're 1.5 million in the hole.
That's right, if we fund them all,
So
yes.
if we funded all the requests, next year we have additional requests that we've already said we're gonna pay for. You do that, then we're screwed.
And that snowballs to almost 8 million.
So what we need to do is look at the requests for 2021, reduce those requests, It'd be great if we could reduce them by 7 million. I'm not sure if that's possible. We'll need to take a look. We need to reduce those requests. Then we'll have an amount of money that we can dedicate and devote to one-time capital expenditures for this year. And then, go ahead.
I apologize. What I would like to see is I would like this is my opinion, I would like to see all the requested budgets, and then we could come back to finance and give a little bit of direction of saying, hey, what we would like to see. And so we know we need to cut stuff, and I think everybody realizes we're gonna have to cut some requests, and that request is, above last year's actuals. And then kind of give finance a little bit of direction saying, hey, here's our priorities on the increases on those requests. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to be able to give
You're saying basically we want to see a priority of those requests to recommend.
Yes, I'd like to give finance the priority of what our requests are.
So if I request some additional funding to the Board of Education, we'll get a chance to review that and discuss it, and then give staff direction from there.
That's what I want to see all the requested budgets, and then we can say, here's our priority of what they are, and help in finance. Instead of finance coming to us and saying, here's their thought, and then we've got to sit there. Because my problem with that sequence is they come in, and then you have one agency who got majority of their requests, and you have another agency that didn't, but we wanted to switch us, then we've got to publicly reduce somebody else's and then increase somebody else. So I think we should be giving finance the priorities, the direction to head on what we would like to see. That's my opinion.
I like that idea. I would be in support of it. I think.
So from staff, would you, you want each individual requested budget and all the notes that go with that so that you can read why they've increased their budget request?
I know I personally would like that.
And we
Okay.
can rank them based on the need and.
There are, there's a lot to go through. My initial concern, I think it's a good idea, would just be that we would get information back quickly so that we can go ahead and have continued conversations and make adjustments.
Well, I would envision this to be still a public process. I mean, as we go through and mention what our suggestions and recommendations are, I'm okay for if a Tuesday meeting turns out to be a workshop just to go through the budget, or we spend adequate time. I know you're on a time constraint to get the budget done. I would be in support of that. I would also, I like your caution. I might go a little further with, in my 4 years, I suppose, of working with the county's budget, this is certainly the largest one-year increase that I've seen. By double, maybe. And I would want to be careful. Even, I like the idea that you said, put some access to one-time projects only, but spend it on one-time projects, but I don't think we even have to spend it. If we can save it, put it in a reserve.
And that is up to the
I'd like
commissioner's
to
discretion.
take a very fiscally conservative approach to the budget, even though we have some money flowing in, because we could set ourselves up for trouble in a time when we receive a lot of funding, and then years down the road, a couple years down the road, we have another recession. And I think the economy is doing fine right now, don't get me wrong, but now's not a time to spend a lot of money just because we have it.
And that's one of my big thoughts of why I asked a couple weeks ago that I think we should also be approving a 5-year budget plan, and not just a 1 year. I know we've received this information. I know it's there, but I think because of the increases that we have already agreed to in 5 years, now 4 years, I think that we need to make sure that we're approving a 5-year plan. And part of it's that exact same thing. We have to be prepared of what could happen.
By approving, what do you mean? Locked in stone or part of the budget?
No, not locked in stone. It's
just approve a projection.
Exactly, because you can't lock it in stone because things can change. I mean, 2 years ago, we wouldn't have thought how much we're going to spend on Kerwin, and now we're going to be forced to it. So it's a term that I always got in the Navy is a plan, just something to deviate from.
Or does that give you an idea on how to move forward with a list of priorities for us to review?
I think so. Would you like recommendations from our staff on potential areas to make adjustments?
I would say so, yes. Sure. Or things that you.
I'd like to provide that, things that we're already
information.
thinking of or potential.
The example that I know that I support, and I talked about it last year, but on the highways with their salt, we've always spent more on their salt usage in the budget. I'm sorry, I thought the salt amount was bogus. We always overspent it and it never made sense. And I asked, hey, why don't we averaging it out for the last 5 years and use that as a budget number? Well, that was just too much money, but we've been spending it anyway, so that's a realistic budget thing. So I think that needs to be increased in the budget, because if we're using it, we've been using it consistently, why aren't we budgeting for it?
And we did make that adjustment for
This year,
fiscal
yes.
year 21 as suggested.
And that's going to be a significant increase.
It is.
So,
Commissioners, you okay with the priority list being
You
presented
give
and
it to the
recommendations?
department. It's not going to be all run together.
We'll give you detailed budget
Or by
papers by
request.
department. Yeah,
And
I will give
request.
you a summary, and we'll also be able to provide to you the requested budgets with the notes.
this would include outside agencies, of course.
It would.
Thank you.
It would. The outside agencies all prepare their own, we have a separate budget document that we use for them, which will give information about what their requests are and why. So yes, we can provide that to you. And then should we make sure that next week we have a work session on the agenda?
Well, we can always have something on agenda, it just can be called for no motion, discussion only. So whether you want to call it workshop or agenda item, just make sure there's.
Could be a general fund discussion item.
Sure.
Okay.
Always.
One more question. Would it be hypothetically fair to say where there's probably 40, 50 employees short right now? Would that be fair somewhere?
As far
in
as vacancies, sir?
Yeah.
Probably,
Is that
yes.
budgeted?
Yes, all vacant positions would be budgeted, and yes, they are.
That's it.
Okay.
I just still wonder where all that money's at, but that's okay. I'll wait and we'll give you. Been like that for a year and a half, so maybe 4 years. But that's not time and place for that.
I'm not sure how long some of those vacancies have been open. I think that may be something to consider. Some of it is just general turnover within the county, but we could look into that. Before we move forward away from the general fund budget, I did want to mention that if you turn to page 4-7, you will have a summary of departmental requests for fiscal year 21. You'll also see the change as compared to fiscal year 20, as well as 2019 actuals are provided for comparison purposes. So earlier, Commissioner Baker asked about maintenance of effort. Were you looking for a number, a dollar value on that?
And where I was going with that, I'd like to know what our maintenance of effort was, just say for the last 5-7 years, every year. Has
I
it
have
remained
that.
consistent?
No, it's gone up every year. I can provide that to you. I don't have it here today, but I have it readily available. So,
Mr. Baker, maintenance of effort, so what it says is that each student, we have to give the amount per student plus an increase every single year. So the only way that maintenance of effort would ever decrease is if there was a population or a student
Right,
population.
I understand that, yeah.
and even though I don't have the
I'm
number.
interested in cost per pupil.
Cost per pupil? Okay.
Yeah, ours is like
Also shows the numbers,
7,700 is what.
dollar figure for the
Right.
years too. Just show the
What
increase.
we give. I think it's almost 14 combined.
Thank you.
Yeah, would you like me to go through any of these requested expenditures today, or is it good that it's just there for your information? You can take a look at it. Another thing that I can provide to you, commissioners, is a breakdown in a spreadsheet form of these expenditures to kind of separate them between wages and benefits, operating expenses, and capital, because that may help you to also look at the budgets if you're going to make some recommendations to our staff. If not, we can move on. We have several departmental budgets that we can get to quickly and do a brief overview of them. Also, there are 2 position requests coming before you today, one from the IT department and actually one from my department, Budget and Finance, so you'll hear a little bit about that. So if that's the case, thank you, Kim. And I can call up Josh O'Neill, Director of Information Technologies. As we move forward, go ahead and, let's see page we're on. Turn to tab 6 for me in your budget books. That'll get you in the right place. I'll do a high-level overview, and then I'll turn it over to Josh for more discussion on the position requests. So the information technology budget did increase overall by $204,000 or 8%. $163,000 of this increase is related to wages and benefits, including $97,000 for personnel requests. The additional increase is mainly related to software cost increases. And if there are no questions on that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Josh.
The salary, the salary increases I'm asking for relate to a reorganization and also replacing some personnel we've lost over the years. Position was transferred out about 2 years ago and never refilled, and that was not a budgeted position, as that budget had been transferred out with that person. And we also, there's been a loss of some personnel due to retirement recently. We've had some experience leave the department, and we need to make up for that and cover some shortfall in amount of staff available to address concerns within the county. Let's see. So the first item is the reclassification of a position. And that is Technical Support Analyst 2 to Infrastructure Specialist 2. And that's a title change and upgrade to suit the duties of the personnel involved in that position. We're also reclassifying the Information Technology Service Specialist position to a Network Engineer 1, as that position used to be filled. We used to have a network engineer position, and that was eliminated several years ago, but we need to refill that at this point, as we do not have a dedicated network engineer any longer. That brings us to the creation of a few new positions. 2 low-level help desk support specialists to do rudimentary work in fixing problems out in the field, keyboard dies, monitor dies. Those duties are currently being done by higher level paid employees whose time is already stretched thin, and the addition of an office associate position to handle some of the duties, just answering the phones and assigning incoming work to the necessary parties. And that also, there's also an elimination of a position and a title change. One of the grade 12s will be eliminated as part of that process. Any questions?
So you're going to eliminate 1 and create 3?
Well, keep in mind, we lost our web designer about 2 years ago. That position was transferred to the PR department along with its budget. So that position was lost to IT, and we haven't reallocated that. So not only was that position responsible for web design, but there were some other duties in the office that the rest of the staff has had to take up. And that's part of why we'd like the office associate position to cover some of those duties. And the grade 12 that I think it's a grade 12 we're eliminating. We expect that slack to be taken up by the 2 help desk positions, which are lower paid positions. It's less skilled work.
By help desk, you mean
Our
staff calling in for?
Yeah, staff calls in, and it's a simple problem. If it's a
Locked out
complicated,
of something.
yeah, my monitor went black, something like that. Right now, we're sending fairly highly experienced people out to deal with those sort of problems, and it's not good use of the resource.
So, real quick question first. The $97,220, that is the increase of the upgrades, the new positions, and the minus. And then I'm assuming the $31,000 increase in the health insurance is for that same reason.
The health insurance is just for the employees that are there now. The 97,000 includes wages and benefit costs.
Okay.
So that-
And I'll get back to that in a second.
Okay.
So you said the increase of duties for the two upgrades, one from 13 to 14, one from 12 to 13. What are their increase in duties, responsibilities?
One of the changes that occurred recently is that with the retirement of a staff member that used to manage the county's phone system and all of its associated bills, that position was translated into a software support specialist position to aid with management of Oracle, Excel, and the county software programs. However, that position did do a lot of work on the phone system that has to be taken up, and so we've assigned those duties to that position that we're asking for the upgrade for, and that's the technical support analyst 2 to infrastructure specialist 2 is going to be assuming those additional duties of managing the county's phone system.
What about the 12 to 13?
Let's see. The 12 to 13, that's currently a position, that's one of the positions that is currently doing some of those help desk things in addition to other duties. And we need somebody to manage the county's network infrastructure. For the past 10 years, I'd been doing that in my previous capacity as deputy director. And before that, there was actually a network engineer job that I had filled previous to that.
Josh, are you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Josh, prioritize. What position is the most critical? If you had to put them in order, what if you had a wish list and it started at your very most need?
I'd say the reclassifications are primary because those are positions that are highly skilled, and we want to make sure those employees are compensated. I don't want to lose any experienced staff at this point. We have lost a lot of experience as far as years of service and knowledge of county systems, and it's important that we act to retain.
So we've lost
those
as they get offered a lot more money somewhere else, because I know that happens.
No, it's retirement. We've lost, a director.
So they just don't leave for more money.
That doesn't typically happen, but in these cases, some of these employees are young enough that is an option for them at this point, and I want to make sure that we retain the experience and skill. We've put a lot of effort into training and familiarizing with county systems.
Sir, with his ask of how much money again for if he fulfilled all his wishes?
$97,000.
And if he fulfilled the two classifications?
That's including those.
Well, just the two classifications.
Oh. Close to 8,000?
Yeah,
Close to 8,000.
8,301.
Yet that's your priority, the two reclassifications.
I think that's an important priority.
And it's $8,000.
Mm-hmm.
Then I do have to go back to the health insurance. It's a 13% increases.
Probably related to different coverage levels being required. So maybe an employee opted for a family coverage where before they may have just had spousal coverage.
Yeah, that's probably due to
'Cause
we had
the
two retirements, and that probably changed a lot of the health coverage.
Right, and so we only had a 5% health insurance increase,
Yeah,
so
that's
something
why I
else,
was-
something else would have had to happen to increase that cost.
Can we look into that to figure out, what, because if it's somebody choosing, then there's nothing we can do, but I just want to make sure that's.
I can confirm that for you. I'm 99.9% sure that additional coverage was chosen.
Perfect. And then the $38,000 increase in software, I'm assuming that's going to be a continuing thing? That's not a one-time software purchase?
That's typical of software services. There's just a year-over-year percentage
Exactly.
increase.
I just wanted to make sure.
Throughout a lot of the budgets this year, we have seen increases in the software line item.
Yep.
And combined, they are quite substantial.
I'm just looking at money here. So after two reclassifications, which is 8,000, what's your next priority?
I would say the help desk support positions. I'm asking for 2 of those. If I could get at least 1 of those.
How much is that, sir? One?
Let's see. Net cost is about.
With benefits?
65,000 with benefits.
And you're eliminating a 12 to get a 9?
Well, I'd like to eliminate 12 and get 2 9s, but
Yeah, no, so, but that's what I'm saying, the
that
12,
that was the idea. The 12 is eliminated.
what's the cost of a 12 with benefits?
Overall, 102,000.
And what's the cost of that, the 6 with benefits?
The 6 is 56,000.
That's the help desk?
Yeah.
The office associate
yeah,
is
that-
57,000 rounded. The help desk support's probably closer to 72,000 per position.
And the 12 is close to 102?
102.
Okay. Thank you.
What's that called? What's the 12 called?
Requesting to eliminate a technical support analyst, grade 12.
Oh, eliminate?
Yeah, to eliminate.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
And that position is going to be vacant soon. I've recommended the person currently filling that position to fill my old role of deputy director. So that position is going to be vacant shortly.
Okay. Thank you.
So your IT increase for the upcoming year, 7.84%?
I believe that's
That's
the
correct.
overall number, yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so what's the county's increase? What's our budget increasing by?
Well, the total revenue increase, if you're looking at that, it's probably substantial, but remember, we cannot be spending the full increase. The county's budgeted increase is 7.9% for revenues.
Rejected.
Projected. But again, the revenue available for use.
What would be the percentage increase that you see for available funding, available revenue?
Available revenue, I would estimate around 245 million to 44 million, something like that.
Percentage-wise?
Probably 5%, if my math's correct in my head. Yeah, 5%.
What are we, is this just for information, or are we actually gonna,
This is just for information today.
yeah,
Um,
Of all, we'll be able to make priorities.
okay.
Yep. And Josh, if you want to stay for this next budget, wireless communications, if commissioners, you would like to flip to page 621. Should be pretty brief. Wireless communications budget increased by 73,000 or 6%. 18,000 is related to wages and benefits, while 24,000 is related to software increases. 38,000 is related to maintenance contract services, which is an increase due to 2 new positions at the 911 center, 2 new at the backup center, along with maintenance contracts on 2 UPS systems that are coming out of warranty. Do you have any questions on those items? All right. Thank you, sir. I'd like you now to flip to page 6-31. This is the Budget and Finance Department.
My space.
The Department of Budget and Finance increased by 108,000 or 7%, all which is related to wages and benefits. Of that 108,000, 76,000 is related to a new position request. The Office of Budget and Finance is requesting a new position titled Assistant Fiscal Analyst. Our staff size has not increased in some time. Meanwhile, the workload has continued to increase. New legislation continues to complicate the process for all areas across budget and finance. Additional regulations mean additional compliance on the county's end, resulting on more staff time dedicated to compliance rather than operational work. This position request is a critical one for our department. The position would be heavily focused on the role of payroll, but would also back up duties for the bank reconciliation, accounts payable, and accounts receivable departments. Payroll continues to increase in complexity, and these tasks are not able to be handled by one person. The congestion of tasks has created more payroll duties shifting to other employees who then have to put their own work on hold to make sure that they can get the payroll done in a timely manner. Aside from that, it is possible that we could have a failure. We have a payroll system, but no payroll manual. Meaning, if our payroll manager leaves the county or is out for an extended period of time, we have limited resources. We need to document the payroll process. It's absolutely critical. The county has between 1,000 and 1,300 employees at any given time. And this critical task requires a reliable backup and detailed notes. Many changes we see in our pay structure continue to contribute to the payroll function. We currently have over 13 different pay schedules, from rotating schedules, 12-hour 911 call takers, 24 to 72, to the 24 on, 48 off shift, 8-hour shifts that turn into 10-hour shifts for portions of the year. The list goes on. In addition, numerous manual adjustments take up considerable time, including but not limited to stipend pay for certifications, temporary upgrades, increased pay for 911 trainers, personal development pay, bailiff pay, food comp, clothing allowance, the list goes on. My current payroll manager works overtime on numerous occasions, and there are still tasks that are not being done. We've modified our business processes to try to accommodate. For instance, we've switched to quarterly reconciliations, where before we did monthly reconciliations. I'm not satisfied with this process. Sometimes we don't catch errors for 3 to 4 months. That's not acceptable. In addition, we used to scan all payroll documentation. We don't have time to do that. And so instead, now we're keeping paper copies. We were getting away from that. Now we're doing that again. I feel like we're going backwards. We're moving in the wrong direction. Even with some of these modifications, trying to extend the amount of reconciliations that we do, we don't have enough time to do all the work without working overtime. The Oracle system that we use for financials and payroll updates quarterly and can cause payroll disruption. When this happens, these disruptions, they have to be found, they have to be researched and corrected before payroll can be processed. This is extremely critical and can take a considerable amount of time. Recent legislation has also contributed to congestion in payroll. An example is this Maryland Sick and Safe Leave Act, where the 40 hours of regular time can be used as sick family and paid out. Before, we were paying $10 per hour for sick time, $10 per day. There are certain reviews and checks done during payroll that have to be done rather quickly. We want to spend more time on those checks because we want to catch more errors. So we're flying through them. We're not able to catch certain things. We find these things months down the road. Another issue is that, the system that we use, it does not take into account certain county policies. And so those policies have to be checked manually. An example of this would be the use of personal leave. So, we have to use that in increments and blocks. Employees could enter 2 hours, 3 hours. That's unacceptable by policy. So all of these things take time to review. In addition, other tasks like, changing of deposit forms, tax forms, and other variances in employees' pay that need researched and resolved. Just the other day, my payroll manager was with someone for 2 hours trying to research an issue as to why there was a pay discrepancy. In addition, numerous reports, as we receive grant funding, we continue to have to provide reports to different departments that are requesting them so that they'll be in compliance with their grant requirements. And so we have congestion from requested tasks like that. The time it takes is too much for one person, and even though we've tried to find ways to make the system better, work more efficiently, and have asked other employees to assist, it remains too much and staff is stretched too thin. In addition to payroll, there are many other areas that we need a resource for. We have extremely high call volumes when we do certain billings upstairs, and when we also have cutoff notices that go out, this employee could assist during those high call times. The employee could also assist when we have congestion with accounts payable invoices. We process approximately 500 invoices a week. In addition to that, the bank reconciliation process needs to be documented. We have one person that does that process. There's no documentation. For these reasons and many more, we are requesting this additional staff member to assist our team with this critical task where failure is not an option. In the work papers, there is a memo and description for the work included for your consideration. Are there any questions on the
Sarah,
budget?
I have a
or the
question. I'm
person?
looking at the memo now.
Mhm.
It says currently we have one employee dedicated full-time to handle the payroll processing and all the other tasks that go along with that. Do we have part-time employees that,
We don't have any part-time employees.
so you're, okay. Do we have it in our budget? That's kind of concerning. You mentioned 1,000 plus employees depend upon
This one person.
that one person.
Mhm.
And that person does a great job, I'm sure.
They do a phenomenal job, and they work overtime to make sure that it's done.
Is-
During holidays, they restructure their schedule.
Is there room in the budget, if that's something that we can agree to, talk about employee morale, bombing if they didn't get their paycheck in time, is there money in the budget to begin the advertising process for that position? So there isn't a delay?
I'd like to take a look at that and report back to the commissioners. I wouldn't want to answer incorrectly.
If there is, I might be amenable to starting that process now because it is so important.
It is
If it's
critical.
not approved until the budget passes in July, and then you're a month or two until that person is hired,
Right. I appreciate
all
that.
I'm-
It is critical, and I will definitely get back to you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, if not, I'd like to move on to the next several budgets. We'll be finishing up shortly here. Please turn page to 6-42. This budget represents our accounting and auditing budget. This budget has not changed, and there's no increase from the previous year. It provides for all the costs associated with our annual audit or any other costs that we would be paying our auditor for.
Does this, I'm assuming this is outside of the, of course it is because it's only $70,000, but outside of the audit that was done for the 8 EMS stations?
Yes, sir.
That was out of the EMS's budget?
That is correct. 6-43 is the Department of Purchasing's budget. They actually had a decrease overall of $9,000 or 2%. The majority of this is related to personnel turnover. Page 6-48, these are very small budgets and there's not much going on, so I'm going through them rather quickly. Page 6-48 is the central services budget. It decreased by $900 or 1% due to copy machine rental costs. And then at this time, we have 3 to go: grant management, gaming, and community funding. I'd like to invite Susan Buchanan up here to assist me in case you have any questions related to those budgets. We'll begin if you turn to tab 25 in your books. And we're going to go to page 21. So it's going to be 25-21. This will be for the grant management fund. The grant management budget increased by $30,000 or 7% due to an increase in wages and benefits. Additional grant funding was able to be secured to pay for some of those administrative costs, and therefore you will see no increase in the general fund contribution for this fund. Because it's a separate fund, we normally have an appropriation from the general fund going over. We still will have an appropriation. There's just been no increase in that amount. Are there any questions related to grant management? All right, if you want to turn.
Actually, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just have one question.
Sure.
So I'm just looking at this, the 2018-19 actuals for the federal grants went from 58 to 23. Then last year, we only approved 2,000, and we went back to the 25. Is that what you're referencing? We're getting those grants back?
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Also, something to note is that for the grant management budget, we do have a $7,000 amount coming from fund balance reserve. Their reserve increased last year substantially, I think $20,000 or $30,000 maybe. And so we have funding available there to cover that $7,000 increase so that we can keep the general fund contribution flat. Okay, moving on, turn to page 25-39. This will be for the gaming fund. Not many changes here. Keep in mind that personnel costs related to wages and benefits are split between the gaming fund and the grant management fund. So for the gaming fund, they increased by $8,000 or less than 0.5%, and mainly due to wages and benefit cost. No other changes there. And on the detailed summary, you can see operating revenues and expenditures. Are there any questions related to gaming revenue?
I have a crazy question.
Sure.
So this is with a law that I'm assuming is going to be passed with the sports betting, and there was two. One, of course, is going to be in the casinos, and I think that's already been passed. But there was a second one about video gaming, that those places would be allowed sports betting. Do we see an increase in that, and would that benefit our legions and things like that?
I have our charitable gaming manager, Laura Reamy, is in the audience, and I've had discussions with her about these types of things, wondering if that would be a negative impact, because you look at there's only so much expendable money that people have to or whether, but it actually, there's been studies, she has cited that it may actually increase our revenue, or would be a good factor for us with our revenue coming in from.
Thank you.
Okay, and then if the commissioners are ready, we'll finish up by looking at the community funding, which is actually on tab 12 in your budget books. So if you would turn to tab 12, you'll see the front page for community funding. There was a budget of $774,000 allocated to the community organization funding for FY21. The COF committee recommendations are attached on the next page. Please take a look at the recommendations and let us know if you have any questions.
They didn't have as much to work with this year, did they?
That's true, because of the amounts related to Commission on Aging and Museum of Fine Arts were removed.
We don't have previous years' recommendations or what they received.
I can give you that. It's not in this packet, but we have a history.
If you'd like that, commissioners, I can make sure that your budget books are updated with that information following that page that you're looking at right now.
This doesn't have any change over the years, but I have a worksheet that shows a history of over the years that we've had this fund, who has received what and whether it's gone up or down.
How many years would you like?
3 years, yeah.
3 years, okay?
That would be good with me.
3-year history.
If just a quick question, I know that we moved the Commission on Aging over to our general fund budget, but we're still also they're still submitting for the COF funding. I thought that was the whole purpose of getting them off of that, so they didn't have to submit for the COF funding.
They have still submitted, and they have
the right to submit.
They have the right to submit. There is no rule against submitting. And I did discuss this with the Commission on Aging, and the Humane Society also is up in the budget as a
That's
budget.
my next question.
Yes. So and they apply each year. It's outside. It's for something that's outside of what their ordinary function would be. The Humane Society is the animal control function, is what we have a contractual basis with them for. So they come in for a special project, a small amount, and that's kind of what the Commission on Aging is doing. They're coming in for a special, like a new expense that wasn't included in their general expenses.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yes.
That's 12.3. I know we changed the percentage variation this year. Did that affect anybody? Are they?
I don't think so. I think that just the changes this year would just be that with the two, with the museum and the Commission on Aging leaving and then moving that amount of money, it just kind of changed the available funds and who applied. But I didn't see a big difference with that. But
We did have Gordy Newman send an email about he received more money, but the one category which he needed the most was in housing for seniors was cut. Am I correct on that?
I don't recall that email, so I don't want.
Well, yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay, sure. But he did, I believe he got, he had two different requests, but depending on what category is how competitive it is as far
Susan
as what's in it.
could review
Yes.
potentially the notes from the committee to determine why.
And what we do.
If that was cut and why.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
appreciate that, so I could
Yes.
properly answer
If you forward that
him.
email, I think he had a general question about what his funding was, but as far as the reasons, we do keep very detailed notes of the committee when they discuss each of the applications, so that I can
category that
give
he
that
did-
information to the applying
category that
agencies.
he helps people who've been displaced through
Mhm.
housing was decreased. But overall, I think he said he received more money, but he was saying that one category was critical.
Okay.
So, but
I'll look into
I'll
it.
forward
Sure.
you the email and
That'd be
then
great.
send me the information.
Mhm.
so we
Susan, I know back in the fall, we had discussed opening this grant up to capital projects, because if they build this into their operating budget, they really grow to depend on this money, and if the money's not there or they don't receive it, it can hurt them, as maybe Commissioner Klein is alluding to. Were there any requests? You said we get a few requests each year for capital projects. Were there requests this year that were automatically denied because
Yes.
they were
We
inappropriate?
continue to get some capital expenses. Sometimes it's a project that's 100% capital that is automatically not able to be funded. Some are a part of their budget. It's a mixture. So you may see some awards that are odd amounts. Sometimes that was because the committee looked at it and said, well, we like this project, we want to fund it, but this part's capital and we're subtracting out.
Makes sense.
If there aren't any further questions, I appreciate your consideration, commissioners, and we'll be back to, we'll be getting you some information in the meantime for the requested budgets, and hopefully be back next week in front of you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One question, or just a comment, not really a question, just budget related. Commissioner Wagner has talked about our number of employee vacancies, and just doing some simple math and a quick research on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, average, it looks like turnover for employees in the local government sector, non-education is a specific category, it's 20%. So if we have 1,000 employees, like you said, we could expect around a year 200 vacancies. So, just putting that into perspective, is that 40 plus
Reasonable.
vacancies? Is that out of whack? Is that out of normal? And maybe it's not. Maybe it's rather low for us. So just want to point that out.
I'm not so much concerned as, there's only two concerns I have with that. One is people working extremely short, like we just heard, and doesn't mean they get everything they want. And two is if you have budgeted positions of 50 people and they're not here, the money, I understand there's going to be turnover. With that many employees, there's turnover with 50 employees.
Yeah.
But I guess two things. How short is this department? Because they maybe have 3 of those that were in a drop program. And how much money,
Right.
where does that, how does that money flow through the system when you're not paying them? You can sit here and talk about it all day. That's the only two concerns I realize there's turnover.
I think it varies by department, honestly, because the departments where, maybe if we don't have detention employees, their time would be filled through overtime. For my department, if we lose an employee, we don't get paid for overtime. So I think there's some differences there. Some of those savings are made up with overtime or part-time wages in some departments, whereas other departments, it's just a general savings to the general fund in total. And then at the end of the year, we see some of those offsets as we take a look at, how our revenues came in, whether they came in over or under budget. So in any given year, where those savings go could be different depending on how our revenues look.
Yeah, variable per department, because, for example, we've had very light winter, very little snow removal, and say, for example, we were done 6 plow truck drivers, that would have been critical for them, but this year with the weather nuts.
So I guess what I was getting at with my comment there, just giving us a hard number doesn't paint an accurate picture.
Tell a
necessarily.
story.
Yeah, it doesn't tell a complete story. So maybe, and I don't need this next week, whenever the commissioners would like, but I would like to see at some point of the vacancies we have, how many positions have been vacant for 60 days?
Prolonged vacancies.
Or 90 days, yeah. If are we looking at just actual turnover, or are we looking at, managers or somewhere might be doing something strategic to keep a position vacant? That way that money flows back into their budget. We need to decipher what are we looking at. If it's regular routine turnover, which kind of the number might suggest to me since we're on the low end.
And more reasoning for longer term vacancies. Okay.
Commissioners, any more comments, questions? If not, I entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
First and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.